Hi everybody, my name is Jan Dufour and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Today I'm going to show you how to make a card using a stencil for the background paper and it's just a simple stamping with a few die cuts. This is done in the theme of school colors, thinking towards graduation. Their colors are red, black, and gold. And then this is another one, a little bit different, using the plaid source, and the colors for them are navy and gold. So keeping in mind your school colors, you can come up with the exact color of homemade DSP. I'm going to show you how I did that and some shortcuts. I'm using a cherry cobbler for the picture, or for this stencil. I'm using the gold. I'm replicating this card here. Now this card, when I made it, I used real red, I think the first time, and your stencil color will always be a little bit lighter, so keep that in mind. So I switched to cherry cobbler. So I have the DSP, or not the DSP, let's talk about the background. It's an 11 by 4 1/4, scored at 5 1/2, with a piece of basic white so that you can have a liner inside. And that is cut at 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to put those aside because I'm not using them right now. And then the inside color to put behind your actual stencil, this is crushed curry, and this is 4 by 5 1/4, which is the same size as the inside. Now the piece I'm using to stencil is actually 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. In other words, if I laid it down, it would completely cover it. And that's because we're going to end up wanting to cut off a little bit on the edges. I would recommend that you put your paper down. You can use lines or just make sure that it's lined up straight. And then I would put little tiny pieces, and I mean tiny, I'm just barely getting 2 of the corners, just enough so that it doesn't shift. And then when I put the stencil on top, I'm keeping in mind where it ends. So like, for example, if I put it here, when I lift this up, I'm getting it off the white paper, which is what I actually do want to do. And so then I put a little piece, keeping it on the stencil and not interfering with the pattern, because you want to be able to do that. As you can see, I used it for the navy blue. It's reusable. Because I want this fairly strong over everywhere, a lot of times when you use the brushes, you fill it up with ink, and then the first thing you do is kind of get rid of that harsh darker line. I'm going to end up wanting it all like that. So I'm not so concerned about that. I'm really going to just lay down the color without blending off the page a little bit. The other thing you can do is, if you're afraid to do that, do blot it off a little. Just don't press so hard. As you can see, it's much lighter when I do that. But I know from experience for this, because it's their school colors I'm trying to duplicate, I want to make it a strong color all the way across. Now, this isn't really messy, but if you really don't like getting ink on your fingers, which is a distinct possibility with this, then I would, and you'll notice I'm not pushing against the grain. I'm kind of going with where I know it's going to sit still. There's no subtlety to this because I'm not blending. I am leaving a mark on, oops, oh, that's not good. Let's put that back where that belongs. You see what I just did? I lifted it up. Now, make sure I get it back in the same spot. I believe that's it. I'll push that down. See, I have red on my finger now. Yeah, so you can always use gloves if you don't want to get dirty, because there is ink not just on the paper, but on the part of the stencil, the black or the grayish brown color on top. It's on top of there, and you need to clean that off. And right now where my hand is, I'm probably getting ink on it. I am, and that's okay. I don't mind a mess. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can lift it up and go, it's a little bit light there and there, but I'm okay with that. If you don't like it like that, I'm just gonna put this off and clean this off later. Close this up for now. Get the brush out of the way because that's gonna make a mess. And take this off. And then you have to kind of look at the pattern that you created. You have to remember that you did in fact cover this little piece up and this little piece up for being able to do it. So what I would recommend, and I've got ink on my fingers and I'm getting it on my, see I got a little bit right here. We're going to cover that up so that won't matter. Let me wipe my fingers off. There we go. And it does take a second to dry. That's the other thing because you have made it a mess. But so what I was getting at is you're going to want to cut, because remember we're cutting this down, and the size we actually want this is our second layer, which if you look at the handout that I have for free under the freebies, I have layers by half. So a half layer, a first layer, a 1.5 layer, second layer, and this is actually 1, 2, the second layer. So I'm going to be trimming this down to 3 3/4 by 5. So take that into account because I'm going to want to cut off that part and this part to make it fit. Let's see. So we want to take this, and you can always do a little bit on both sides if you feel like that would help. So for in this instance, I am going to take it, I want it to eventually be 3 3/4, but I want to make sure I get all of that and all of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at 4 at first. Too many things over here. So I know I got a big chunk of that white out. And then I'm going to turn it this way because that's the other place there's a problem. And I want that part to be 5. So I just need to know, do I need to cut any more on this side? And the answer is no, I'm good. So I can go ahead and put this down at 5. And then go back and decide which side do I like better, because I have to come down to 3 3/4. And I kind of want to cut a little bit off of this. It doesn't always require that you take parts off of little sections. I'm just looking at what I have and the way I like it. So now we're at 3 3/4. Pull that off. And I feel like this is well balanced as far as the edges showing enough for it to be a nice pattern. So I'm going to set that aside. Everything else I have is cut apart. So we'll start with this so the glue can dry. We're going to adhere the white inside. So this is where you can leave a message. One of the nice things too about adding layers to the inside is because you're using regular cardstock, which is, 65 pound, I think, you definitely would like it to be thicker, like when we use our basic white thick. But it doesn't matter because you're laying a layer on it on both edges. So it'll end up feeling nice and solid is what I'm getting at. And as you can see, I'm just putting, I don't put a lot of glue. Doesn't really require it. Get 3 sides right and the other side will work. Make sure this, and this is right, and that one will be right. So now I'm going to use my favorite technique of helping glue dry, and that's to put my large stamp on top of it. I'm going to put it off to the side right now. We also need to glue this part on top And let me tell you right now, while we're waiting for glue to dry, the stencils I used are artistic masks. There's some nice ones. There was that one that's kind of like a fleur-de-lis. It's not really. This one is really pretty. And then I used 2 of them to make the stripes. And then you can actually use some of these to make tag-like things, which is cool. And as you can see, it didn't take me long. Sometimes you just don't have the colors you need or something. Then I did use 2 different things. I used for stitch rectangles, I used the second biggest or smallest, because it works out that way, long one for the sentiment that I'm actually going to stamp. And then I used, oops, and we're sticking together. I used the smallest of this shape here, which is this one. And then the larger one to give a background, the black one. So that goes here, and that's cut out. So we can assemble those. I am gonna add glue to this and let this sit for a second too. I just was trying not to touch it because you put a lot of ink on there and you got to give it a second to dry. All right, lay that down. Again, I look here, here, and here. Make sure that's right, and then when I lay it down, it'll be right on the other side. All right, I'm gonna let that sit under there, and we're gonna assemble these 2 things, and we're gonna stamp. Now, if you've been following me at all, you know I use my Stamparatus a lot. Multiple reasons. I really need to set up a show and tell on all the different things that I do. But one of the most common things I do is I'll create a template. So I put that die here and cut it out. Doesn't matter where you put it. Same thing with the inside because I use that on a different card. Then you put it up in the corner, and then you take your stamp, and I will show you right from the beginning, and you lay it, oops, right inside where you want it to be, and then you close it. It's so funny, one of the last videos I did, it was like I could not get it to close. It's kind of frustrating, actually. I think I'm going to use black, or tuxedo black, or mementos. And this, it probably will want to get stamped twice. I want a real, now you'll notice I didn't put anything in there. I'm checking to make sure that I have it straight, and I do. So then what you do is you can cut out a bunch of these at the same time, slide it in there, make sure it sets, and then go ahead, ink it, and press. One of the last videos I did, I could not get what I was doing straight. I had done it 100 times before, but because I was on camera, I just couldn't quite get there. Now, that stamped well, but I like it really dark, so I'm gonna go ahead and ink it again and press it down. And doesn't that make a lovely congrats? Now, this can be for graduation. Of course, it can be for a lot of other things. New babies, new jobs, lots of different reasons why you can put congratulations on a card. You'll notice in the card that I made, I kind of wipe out part of that, and that was by design. I tried a lot of different die cuts. This is making a glare. A lot of different die cuts just to see how they all looked. As you can see on this one, I just used these 2. And I tried different things. A lot of times I will just cut out pieces and play to see how I like it. So this one obviously is just a subset of the others. So I'm just gonna glue that on. Make sure I have the right side. It's not the right side of the cardstock, but more the die cut impression. I don't know if you can see it on the black. Yeah, you might be able to see. Probably not. There's a little ridge around here, and that comes from, you can see it better on the red. I'll show you in a second. So I'm just centering that, making it so that it's even all the way around. You can see a little edge there, and that's what I consider the front. Okay, so that's all right. And then this one, when I put it on, it's actually gonna cover maybe part of what you thought I should leave open. You can do a couple of things. You can cut this square out and then shift it over a little bit and cut it again, so it makes it a bit smaller, and you might get some of the edges in. But I was okay to not have it. I kind of like this look. So as you can see, it's covering up the red completely on the side. I'm making it even on the black, and then even here and there. Then I used dimensionals, which I apparently put away, to lift on there. Our dimensionals are fairly thin, so you know, if you're just doing one layer like this of popping it up off the card, it will mail fine. And there's not so many layers that it makes it go over 1 ounce, which is the regular stamp cost. They do, FYI, make an additional ounce stamp, which is less than the cost of a second stamp. So I usually keep some of those handy. Now, the boo-boo. I can do a couple of things. I could put it right over here to cover that up. I don't know if you've seen me use my Tombow Mono sand eraser. This is a rounded design, but just to show you, I will just do the white edge. You can actually erase ink, and that pretty much gets rid of it. Now, I can't get in the design itself, but I cleaned up this one. But I'm fine with putting this centered right here, and then there's no worries. See, there's always a way to fix your mess-ups. They're just new designs. Well, that's all I have. This is going to be posting in April. And so our new catalog will be out, and that will be mighty exciting. I will probably host a new catalog walkthrough with some of the favorite things that I've purchased that you can look forward to seeing in some of our other posts going forward. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe below if you are on YouTube. There will be a link to my blog. If you would go to my blog, you will get all of the instructions, including a free worksheet that has all of the dimensions in it, so you don't have to print the internet. And so that will make it a lot easier if this is a card that you want to keep in your stash. Of course, any sentiment can go on here. And of course, you can use DSP for the background. Don't forget that we have some online exclusives, and you can go to my website. The website I use for my Stampin' Up! Products that you can purchase. So my website blog is stampmesilly.com. My store is jandufour.stampinup.net. When you go there, you will see a link for online exclusives. Some of those will be until supplies last. But if you try to order it and it says not currently available, that means they've reordered and they will have more. You'll just have to wait. My email, if you need to get in touch with me, is jandufour@yahoo.com. Thanks so much for joining me. Goodbye.